there are actual policy issues, and they are going to be at stake in this upcoming election. And one of them is how do we get back the American middle class? For 4 decades in the United States, the 40s, 50s, 60s, excuse me, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, for 4 decades, we had GDP growth in excess of 3% per decade. That has never happened in the history of the United States. It only happened during those 4 decades, during the time that the top tax rate was above 74%, when corporations were paying roughly a third of the total federal bill. Now it's 11%. And when working people were making money. I mean, when Reagan came into office, GM was the largest employer. They paid $54 an hour in today's money. Today, Walmart, after 35 years of Reaganomics, Walmart is the nation's largest employer, and they pay $9 an hour. Peter Jeddick would, I think, choose to disagree with me, a historian, conservative, author of 4 books, his latest, How Democrats Bankrupted America. His website, Peter Jeddick, JEDICK.com. Peter, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tom, for having me.
It says here that you suggest that Greece is melting down. Is America next? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think we have to look at Greece. They're having the problems. We have to look at our debt. We have this huge debt. And I think, like you said, about the presidential candidates, I think that should be one of the issues. Well,
our debt is a little over 100% of GDP right now. At the end of World War II, our debt was 129% of GDP. Eisenhower solved that problem by borrowing more money, taking us up to 133% of GDP, and then spending that money on infrastructure, on the national highway system, which, by the end of his term, I think we were down to around 40% of GDP, 50% of GDP. And, we could grow our way out of it, although I'm guessing as a conservative, you would not be in favor of that.
Sure, I'd like to see us grow our way out of it, but somehow we have to pay it back. We're $18 trillion in debt. Well, no one's talking about that.
No, we're $11 trillion in debt to other countries. We've got an $11 trillion trade debt. That's a real debt that we actually have to pay. It's $35,000 per man, woman, and child in the United States.
That's
the national debt, which is different than the trade debt, and that trade debt is why 1/7 of all American assets are now owned by foreigners. Whereas before Reagan came into office, it was it was like 2/100ths of it was minuscule. But because of our trade policies and our trade debt, foreigners can only spend dollars here, so they end up buying everything here. But with our national debt, there's first of all, that represents private sector savings. And this is the thing that people who are hysterical about the national debt always miss. Every dollar of the national debt is actually a dollar invested in somebody who wants to save in a safe place. And there's no lack of demand for American treasuries. I mean, they're selling at 1%, and people are still buying them. So there's no national debt crisis, Peter.
Well, do you know how much we have to borrow every day just to keep our government working?
It's not that we have to borrow. It's that we have to allow people to invest in the United States.
Well, we have to borrow $2 billion every day. This is like Congress going over there and putting their credit card in the machine before they show up for work and borrow $2 billion a day. The Greek crisis is only over $1.8 billion that they owe to monetary funds.
The Greeks do not control their own currency.
We have to borrow that every day.
The Greeks do not control their own currency. They're stuck with the euro. If they had the drachma, they could devalue the drachma. They could get out of that, whatever debt they have instantly. I mean, Puerto Rico has the problem that you're describing because they use the dollar. But we don't have the problem. We control our own currency. This is the old, we should behave like a family argument. It's nonsense. Families don't issue their own currency. We control the dollar.
Well, someone's going to have to pay this debt back, and I think it's going to be my kids and my grandkids, and I know we're paying interest on it.
But, the one time, actually, I totally disagree. The debt is savings. We need a safe place to save money. Clearly, people want to put, $18 trillion in something that is safe, and that's U.S. Treasuries. When Andrew Jackson paid off the national debt, it's been done once in our history. It created the worst and longest depression in the history of the United States because there was no place for people to safely put savings, and so instead they started speculating on Wall Street, and the whole thing crashed.
Well, back then, I don't know that things were a lot different back there about Wall Street, but who's gonna have to pay the interest? Like we pay interest on this debt. Who's supposed to pay this debt off? Is my kids, my grandkids?
Well, we pay the interest to ourselves.
We're just printing money for ourselves. Is that what you're saying?
No, we pay the interest to ourselves. When we pay interest on when treasuries pay interest. If I've got $10,000 invested in treasuries and I make $100 this year in interest, that's me and a U.S. citizen taking $100 from my government as interest payment, and then I'm going to spend that into the economy, and that's going to be a good thing. It's going to stimulate the economy. I mean, if our national debt was 80% held by foreigners, I would share your concern. But it's less than $2 trillion of it is held by foreigners, and there's enough demand domestically for our federal debt that could easily be consumed if China and Saudi Arabia were to decide to go away, and they don't own, between the two of them, I don't think they even own half of that. But treasuries are an important investment. They're you would take that out of the portfolio, you'd totally disrupt worldwide markets.
So you think we should just keep kicking the raising the debt limit? That's the answer to.
No, I think we should stimulate. I think we should change our trade policies. We've lost 63,000 factories since 2000, since George Bush came into office. We don't know how many we've lost since Reagan started changing the rules of trade with most favored nation status for China. But it may well be several 100,000 factories that we lost. We've only been counting them since 2000. We've lost 63,000 factories. That's millions of jobs. If we were to simply change our trade policies back to what they were before Reagan came into this country, then Walmart would be the way it was when I was living in the 1980s in Atlanta, and Sam Walton opened a Walmart store just up the road from us, and I think it was Alpharetta, and the big sign said, "Made in the USA." I mean, if we started making things here, that would stimulate our economy. People would go back to work. You'd see, wages would start getting competitive. Wages would start going up. Tax revenues would start going up. This isn't rocket science.
Oh yeah, I like to see everything made in America. I'm from Cleveland. That's a manufacturing town. I've seen what happened to the auto plants that I grew up right next to. All my friends went that worked in the auto plants.
Yeah,
we owe Japan over $1 trillion. We owe China over $1 trillion. These are the countries that we helped during World War II. We brought them back from disasters.
Yeah, China wouldn't surprise me.
I don't see why we have to borrow money from them.
Well, we're not borrowing money from them. There are people in Japan, there are companies in Japan, and many of them are American companies, by the way, who are investing in treasuries. That doesn't mean that we owe them that money. Ultimately,
we don't have to pay it back.
Well, yeah, they can redeem the treasuries or they can roll the treasuries over, but there's always somebody behind them who is willing to buy those treasuries. Our national debt is not a problem. Our trade debt is a crisis, Peter. It's an absolute crisis.
The trade debt is terrible, too. I agree with that.
So, ObamaTrade.com is a great website about this from a conservative point of view, or economyincrisis. It's either .com or .org. From a conservative point of view about these trade issues. So how did the Democrats bankrupt America in 30 seconds? Oh, Peter just froze up.
We've got to pay interest if we're selling these bonds. So.
Oh, okay, Peter, I'm sorry we lost your Skype there.
Lost the Skype, but I'm on the phone here.
Okay, well we'll have to continue. We'll have to continue to fight another day. Peter Jeddick, historian, reformed liberal, author of 4 books. His latest, How Democrats Bankrupted America. His website, Peter Jeddick, JEDICK.com. Peter, thank you for dropping by for a well-spirited discussion.
Okay, Tom, I really appreciate that. That was fun.
Thank you.